Hi, my name is Jane McElligott. I'm a full-time faculty member of legal support and services here at Purdue University Global. And this video is on a key case that was recently decided on the climate litigation movement known as Held versus Montana. So in this case, it was brought by 16 plaintiffs, young plaintiffs, who brought about allegations of the harm that climate change was causing to them and how the state of Montana was facilitating this climate change through its recently passed statutes. So let's take a look at this a little more deeply. So the plaintiffs, again, the reason for the name is that the lead plaintiff was Ricky Held, so Held versus Montana. There is a nonprofit environmental rights organization known as Our Children's Trust, who also represented or worked with the youth in bringing this lawsuit. And the defendant was the state of Montana and its agencies. So the plaintiffs specifically challenged the constitutionality of a provision of the what's this set of laws called the Montana Environmental Policy Act and its regulations. And part of that is known as the MEPA limitation. And it bars state agencies from considering the impacts of greenhouse gas, so GHG emissions, or climate change in their environmental reviews for any fossil fuel review permits. So if the state were considering, say, a new coal mine or some other form of fossil fuels, whether it's a new establishment or the renewal of a previously granted permit, under the MEPA limitation, the agency could not consider the impact of greenhouse gas and, of course, the climate change that results from that. So the plaintiff's key argument was that the MEPA violation violates their right to a clean and healthful environment. And this is guaranteed under the Montana Constitution, under the state constitution. And Montana, this is not all states have this. Montana is among a few states that have this key provision in its Bill of Rights, very similar to our United States Constitution and its Bill of Rights. And so the plaintiffs in this case presented evidence to show the impact of greenhouse gases on the environment and actually on the plaintiffs themselves. So they testified at trial, for example, the impact of wildfire on their ability to do the normal everyday things that kids do, go play soccer, and the health impacts on that they were already feeling as a result of this legislation. So the judge in this case, now this is only a trial court case, so it's likely going to be appealed, but it is a really landmark case on this whole issue that is being referred to as climate litigation movement. That's something that's been happening in other countries, but this is the first decision in the U.S. That is a positive ruling for the advancement of climate litigation movement. So the judge in this case ruled in favor of the youth plaintiffs, and she struck down this MEPA violation and said that it is a violation of the plaintiff's fundamental constitutional right under the Montana Constitution to a clean and healthful environment. And that's the exact words that are protected under the Constitution. And the court further ruled that the state has a duty to protect citizens from climate change by considering the effects of greenhouse gases and climate change in its decisions its agencies make regarding fossil fuel permits. Otherwise, all the agencies could really consider was, say, local environmental impact or maybe the immediate public health effects, but they were barred from considering the larger picture of climate change. But the judge put an end to that by saying that provision, the MEPA provision, is unconstitutional. So a very powerful ruling by this trial judge. And so the significance of it is that, and even though it's going to be appealed, it is taking effect immediately. So the court's rule really means that Montana is a major coal and gas producing state. And in fact, a third of its energy comes from burning coal. And so when it makes a decision, again, regarding whether it's the renewal of a fossil fuel permit or a new fossil fuel permit, it has to consider climate change as one of those factors in deciding whether to approve or renew fossil fuel projects. And it was very interesting. The decision is actually, the actual case is over 100 pages because it's filled with science on climate change, and it's a really interesting decision to read. So the judge found that Montana, and this is kind of surprising because I think a lot of us think of Montana as wide open fields and, Yellowstone and that sort of place, but it actually is home to 5,000 gas wells, 4,000 oil wells, 4 oil refineries, and 6 coal mines. So given all that, it is a major emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in the world. And in fact, in absolute terms, in per person terms, and historically. So she likened it to a whole other country. For example, she mentioned Pakistan had the equivalent output of greenhouse gases as Montana does. So it's not something to be dismissed, which is exactly what the state was trying to do. The state really didn't fight this in terms of trial testimony or evidence at all. They kind of just gave in. And so the plaintiff's evidence and testimony was just powerful and with really nothing to oppose it. So the judge allowed, climate change really went on trial, and the judge followed the science and ruled that Montana's greenhouse gases have been proven to be a substantial factor in affecting the climate. And so the court's decision in this case, again, it is the first one, a first positive ruling in this on this path to climate litigation movement. So again, and it's packed with the science of climate change. So it will serve as strong persuasive authority for other cases. There's actually 2 other climate litigation cases pending right now, one in Hawaii, one in Virginia. And these cases are going to continue, and really the first stop is states that have what are referred to as green amendments. So much like the Montana amendment that provides a clean and healthful environment, that's known as a green amendment. The others that have very similar provision to Montana, the other states are New York and Pennsylvania. There are a few other states, Hawaii, Illinois, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, that have environmental protections in the state constitutions, but not directly in the Bill of Rights. So when that right is in the Bill of Rights, as in Montana, a previous decision in Montana actually held that the right to a clean and healthful environment is a fundamental right. And when a court holds that, the state can only justify any kind of violation of that right by strict scrutiny standard, which is an extremely tough standard to pass. So probably Hawaii does have that provision, so hopefully that will help them. But again, it's not quite designated a green amendment simply because it's not in the Bill of Rights. But hopefully it will still prevail in Hawaii as well. So that is the case of Held versus Montana, a nice positive decision on the road to climate litigation movement. So thanks for listening. And here are some, if I will go to this slide for a minute, in case you'd like to look up, there's some very good articles on this case. And there is the link to the actual case. Again, a very long case, but packed with interesting information analyzing the whole issue of climate change. And this too, this last article I just want to mention, it speaks to there's a book on green amendments talking about this whole issue a lot more detail, and it is mentioned in that Guardian link. So thanks again. Take care, all.